Prince Harry is once again attempting to rewrite history and essentially gaslight the British public and the public at large regarding the British tabloid media in order to suit himself and wife Meghan Markle because they don't like negative stories about themselves. The couple want to censor any sort of negative narratives that are out there about them, even though they're the ones who really started it at this point with Spare, Netflix, the Oprah Winfrey interview, so many things. Harry and Meghan are largely responsible for the negative public perception about themselves, but Harry wants to blame the media. So he's going about this in, I think, a very despicable way, which is essentially trying to gaslight, lie, mislead, misdirect the public into thinking in his way, which oftentimes, if you look at it, is actually, quite frankly, pretty delusional. Harry has totally lost the plot when it comes to the reality of his life. He says that the rift in his family is because of his campaign against the tabloids, not because he shared their intimate personal details in his memoir and reality TV show. Oh, no, no, no. It's this tabloid case. Harry is just completely and utterly up on himself and his savior complex. But the problem is he's going about this by very underhanded and deceitful means and hoping that he can convince you to go along with his line of logic. But when you look at this documentary and what it's saying, it's actually entirely hypocritical. Harry even says things in it that are wholly hypocritical to what he himself has done and said over the last 4 years since Mexit. And unfortunately, Harry is never held to account, which really reflects what he wants the media to do. He doesn't want the media to check in, fact check, do any of these sorts of things. All he wants them to do is ask softball questions and nod along. That is why he is pursuing this campaign against the media, not because he wants to save Britain and the British media, as he says. It's so that he can censor them, so that he can castrate them and basically make them all yes mans to him and Meghan Markle's delusional plans for world domination, I guess. I don't know. But people need to know that what Harry is saying here is only half truths. It's misdirects. There are things here that he's saying and not saying that are very critical. And yes, phone hacking did happen. Yes, information by the media was gotten through illegal means, of course. But that's not actually what Harry is railing against. If you actually really watch the documentary, if you know really what's going on about behind the scenes, and you listen to what Harry says, he's pursuing these cases so that the negative stories against him and Meghan Markle can go away. But Harry, that's not going to happen. And you're not making your case at all through here. And so Harry really needs to give up this relentless savior campaign that he is having, because really at the end of the day, the only person he wants to save is his wife and himself. That's it. Britain can burn, but as long as Harry and Meghan gives positive headlines, that's all they care about. So we are going to discuss this today because this is so important. I cannot stress and emphasize enough how important this is, because at this point, and I want to do a whole video on this, there is so much toxicity and misinformation now in the royal social media space, which has been contributed to and fueled by Harry and Meghan, that truth is sometimes hard to come by. And for those who don't really understand how royalty works, which is why it needs to be pushed against as much as possible. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany. I provide you all compelling royal commentary about the latest news and sometimes the drama going on behind the scenes. So if you guys want to hit that subscribe button, that would be absolutely fantastic. I would love to have you back. And so guys, this could be sort of a long video, so we'll go ahead and get into this. But if you guys don't know, I do have a sponsorship with Ana Lucia Diamonds, who supplied my stud earrings right here. And then I also have an upcoming trip with followers who are interested to Germany and the Czech Republic to check out the Christmas markets. And we already have that trip confirmed, so it is going ahead, which is super duper exciting. If you'd like to join in, we still have plenty of spots. It is so fun. People make amazing friendships on these trips. I just got back from Scotland and the group chat is still going. And so you just make amazing friends and people who want to talk about royals and stuff. So if you're interested, again, we'll have links down below for all of those things. And for Ana Lucia Diamonds, if you use code ROYAL20, you shall save 20%. Okay, so let's get into this. And I will say again, this is a complex issue, and I'll go over some of the complexities about this whole phone hacking situation later, because there is some truth that the media goes too far sometimes. There is a coarse truth that illegal and means were used in order to gather information, which should not happen. Of course, that's, I mean, part of the reason why I was hesitant to get into media. In some ways, even though I should have, because I love news and everything, was in part because I thought sometimes reporters are kind of scummy. And I'm fully aware of that. And that's why I call myself a commentator at some points, because anyways, so this situation is very, very complicated. But at the same time, too, what Harry is advocating for in this documentary is a sleight of hand, because it's not really about these cases that are really based out of the early 2000s, 1990s. It's about what's happening to Harry and Meghan now and their desire to censor the media. That's what they want to do. They want to censor them, because for Harry and Meghan, the negative narratives that exist about them cannot go forwards. Harry and Meghan cannot stand that. They want to eliminate that completely. We should all just go on with Harry and Meghan. We do not need to question them. We do not need any investigations. It is no business of ours for X, Y, and Z. And while sometimes that might be true, when you're taking public funds, when you're undermining the head of state of a country, yes, questions need to be raised. Lines of inquiry need to be pursued. And frankly, the media landscape from the early 2000s to now is entirely different, utterly different, that you almost can't really compare the two in some ways. And so Harry, in many instances, is chasing ghosts or imaginary dragons, because he's trying to slay the dragon here. That's the big thing. This is David versus Goliath. He even says that. I'm like, you're the prince, for Pete's sakes. Like, give me a break. This is not David versus Goliath. But Harry is not dealing with a full deck at this point. I don't know if it's because he's so desperate to please his wife. I don't know if he totally believes it and has drunk the Kool-Aid. I don't know exactly what is going on in his mind. But none of this really comes together. And again, I think he's trying to make equivalencies where equivalencies don't exist. And you have to know what's going on behind the scenes to really be able to poke holes in it in some instances. Some people, of course, immediately pick up on most things. But he's banking on ignorant people not knowing what he's saying is only the half truth of it. That's what he's banking on, which is what Harry and Meghan have been banking on the entire time. In their Oprah Winfrey interview, when they talked about Archie's skin tone and him not getting a title, they both knew it was because of the letters of patent. They were banking, though, on the American public not knowing that. And of course, most Americans do not. They did not know that that was basically a flat out lie, that Archie was never entitled to a title when he was born, because he was the great grandchild of the monarch and not the grandchild of the firstborn son of the Prince of Wales. So at this point, Archie and Lily, when they were born, were not supposed to have titles. They still probably shouldn't have titles. But that's a totally different discussion here. What we're talking about here is the truth of the matter, which is that Harry and Meghan are delusional in their beliefs, want other people to believe them, and are deliberately trying, in my opinion, to mislead the public. I will preface this whole video by saying a lot of these are my opinions based on facts and information I've gathered. You are free to have your own opinions. You're free to do your own research. But this is based on 10 plus years of exhaustive royal watching. I watch royals all the time. That's part of the reason why I started this channel. I watch all royals too, not just the British royals, the other European royals, where you see patterns within families, which makes sense in certain instances why certain things happen. And so I will just, again, preface this video by saying this is all my opinion. And of course, what Harry's saying is 9/10 of the time also just his opinion, not fact as he presents it. So let's go ahead and get into this. And we'll be pausing this about every 15 seconds for copyright reasons.
Not least for a prince who continues to fight.
This is a David versus Goliath situation. The Davids are the claimants, and the Goliath is this vast media enterprise.
He says this as a guy who is currently employed by a vast media enterprise, which is Netflix. The hypocrisy of Harry and Meghan is hard to understate here. They just completely and utterly live in the land of delusion. They are totally and completely disconnected from reality in many ways. And I don't think statements like this help him at all. He's fighting against this vast media enterprise. But oh, no, don't look at my $100 million Netflix deal in the corner where I am actively trying to undermine my family by airing their dirty laundry in a reality TV show about my life. No. It's about the media enterprise. No. Harry, in many ways, you are the Goliath. You are the barbarian beating down on everybody else. And the Davids are the royal family who can't fight back. Now, David, of course, did fight back. He actually, was able to utilize his slingshot to hit the giant right in the center of the noggin and kill him. Just, as a biblical reference, Harry, that you might want to think about at this point, because in many ways, he is the Goliath. He is the one trying to bash people over the head. And this is not going to go well for him. It never seems to go well for him. And I think, of course, it's a terrible, terrible route to start to talk about your case before it's fully settled. Because now, if I'm the media and Harry's suing me, I'm going to drag through every single person that's referenced in this video. I'm going to drag up every single thing Harry said. I'm going to show him for the hypocrite that he is, raking him over the coals. And this is what's so stupid about Harry's campaign, endless campaigns, is that he doesn't realize he's just fueling the media. He kind of recognizes that, and then he doesn't. And he's like, well, they're going to do things anyway. But you don't have to fuel them. But he does. He does. It's so completely crazy. So let's keep going.
And it's not just the rich and famous.
This wasn't salacious gossip. We were just normal people who got involved in a horrific incident.
So I will just reference this guy here because obviously this is part of the 7/7 terrorist attacks in London and stuff. And they have a couple other people who I really don't know because I'm not British. So I don't know kind of all the salaciousness behind some of these. Obviously, that's Hugh Grant. But what I will say here is that, yes, the media sometimes uses despicable tactics to try to find information. But again, that's not what Harry's railing against. Not really. Not really. He's upset over certain things. And it all has to do with Meghan, Harry's former relationships, his mother. It's all based in these delusions, I think, that he can litigate himself into being the savior of the British people, bringing his mother back to life, making his wife happy, all these things that are just not actually going to happen for him. I'm so sorry to say, the litigation process is not going to fix Harry's personal problems. It's not. It's just exacerbating them. It's making him miserable. And so he just fails to realize that, though. So let's keep going. And I'm going to move around a bit so we can get to Harry's bits, mostly.
Giving some new drive in their fight for the truth.
I don't think there's anybody else in the world that is better suited to be able to see this through than myself. I'm trying to get justice for everybody.
I'm going to get justice for everyone. I'm in the best position to get justice for everyone. Me. I. This is not to actually help other people. It's to help Harry and to fulfill this savior complex that Meghan Markle has churned up to 11 inside him. I think the idea of, trying to save people is great. But Harry, at the end of the day, is not saving anyone but himself. He's not helping anyone. He is just fueling things and making things worse and really sort of beating a dead horse in some ways because some of these tactics are no longer being used because they're completely out of date. You can't really phone hack the same way you could anymore. You can't really, get into somebody's voice messages or anything like that. Like you really can't get there. So this all, again, is pretty pointless. And I just hate this soulful, look, oh, so sad. My life is so hard. I'm a prince. I live in a $14 million mansion. I have a wife and $100 million Netflix deal and 2 kids and dogs. But my life is so hard. You need to look into my soulful eyes and feel the pain of being a prince. Okay.
Can you just describe what it is that you're looking at?
A very young photograph of me from my school days and a headline saying Harry's taking drugs, smoking dope with pals in the pub.
Okay, so I'm supposed to feel bad for you here, Harry. Is that what I'm getting here? That I'm supposed to feel bad that you were caught in a pub smoking dope with your pals. I'm supposed to feel bad that the media reported on that. So again, I just don't understand why I'm supposed to feel sorry for him for his own mistakes. That's a decision you made, Harry. Nobody forced you to take that. If you took that, that's your problem, not mine.
What goes through your head when you see that now?
I don't even know what to say anymore.
What is the mystery? I don't understand what the mystery is. You were taking drugs. You got caught. There were media stories about it. You're a prince. Again, your whole lifestyle funded by the taxpayers. Why in the world is this like, oh, I don't know what to say anymore? Like, your brother didn't get caught doing that. Probably, he might have done it. I don't know. But he wasn't stupid enough to get caught. And this has nothing to do with phone hacking. This is just your own stupid decisions. Again, this woe is me narrative for his own dumb mistakes, I find incredibly obnoxious and a horrible example to show to young kids. Oh, no, it wasn't my fault that I was caught doing dope in a pub. No, 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 it was the media's fault. That's what his thing is. It's like, well, I I got caught smoking marijuana in my parents' home, but it's just because they came home early. It's like, well, if you weren't doing it in the first place, you wouldn't have gotten caught. Like, this is not rocket science. My goodness.
Being that young and being under constant surveillance and distrusting everybody around you, yeah, it sucks.
Okay, so there are two different things going on here. He's saying he's under surveillance. You weren't under surveillance, Harry. You are a prince. Because of certain privileges that you have, it results in certain interests. That's just life. And so he's just, I think, so focused on this negative aspect of it that he can't let it go. And I don't think it's particularly healthy for him. And again, I think he's gaslighting, misleading, and confusing people about what was actually going on here. Yes, you were followed by the press. You were a prince. If you didn't want to be a prince, if you don't want this focus around you, even now, drop the titles and do something else. But no, no, no. He wants all the privileges, but he doesn't want any of the scrutiny that comes with it. He doesn't want any of the responsibility that comes with it. He just wants the nice stuff. That's not life. Oh, I can't. Oh, his face trying to look. My life is so hard. Oh, give me a break.
It's been a bitter legal battle that finally reached its conclusion last December.
Today is a great day for truth as well as accountability.
But the truth is, this is not going to change anything because most of this case is looking at things that happened over a decade ago. Has the news coverage changed at all, Harry? Has any of this actually changed and made your wife happy? I guess the answer is no. And that's because she's probably never going to be happy. So this is utterly pointless.
The judge ruled that phone hacking and unlawful information gathering was habitual and widespread at the Mirror, the Sunday Mirror, and the People for more than a decade.
But I don't think anybody was arguing that wasn't really the case. That's what's so silly about all this, is that most people agreed that this was probably happening. So again, Harry's whole pursuit of this, it looks kind of silly because he's talking about a thing that everybody agreed with happened and was bad. But he wants to continue pursuing this, but really for, again, his own agenda.
This case is not just about hacking. It is about a systemic practice of unlawful and appalling behavior.
Speaking of appalling behavior, what about Harry's appalling behavior toward his family? Does he take any accountability for that? No, because he's all about taking accountability, but for everyone else in the world, Harry is this innocent little lamb, and everybody else are the terrible monsters, according to Harry.
For both sides, it was the end of a punishing legal process, with one side claiming victory, the other seeking to draw a line under the saga.
And this is the thing too. The Mirror was like, oh, let's just settle and make this go away. We've gotten past this now. And Harry, again, it's vendetta. It's vindictive. It is a campaign of vengeance. It's not really a good thing necessarily. Harry's not in here for the goodness of people. He's there for revenge.
But it all might not have happened without the persistence and financial firepower of an aggrieved and angry prince.
I hate this because, again, it is all about Harry. Harry's aggrieved. He is angry. He has financial firepower. So is Harry's whole thing now is he's going to dump all of his Netflix money into these court cases that are not going to fix his life? At the end of the day, Harry, these are not going to fix anything. He's going in there thinking he's fixing something, but he's not. None of this is going to be fixed. None of this is going to be changed. It's all going to be exactly the same. This is so unbelievably pathetic. It's like laughable. It's laughable how deluded this guy is. But of course, his lawyers laughing all the way to the bank at his expense.
This is the first time Prince Harry has spoken about his win.
Mostly because nobody cares, Harry. At the end of the day, nobody cares because we think this is all dumb. This is pointless. You're the only one who cares. Really, at the end of the day, you're the only one who cares.
Did you feel vindicated?
Yeah, and I did feel vindicated. Phone hacking has been going on for a long time. It's some, especially the defendants, claim for it to be historical. Well, there's a huge amount that has come to light now.
But no, it's not. Because the thing is that Harry is failing to recognize is the reality of the situation is that even though he's quote unquote won, the media is still driving the narrative, Harry. So even if you won, guess what? They don't have to say anything about it. They can still write whatever they want. So what has come to light? Harry, nothing has come to light. I watch royal stuff all the time. I try to read most articles that come up about the court case and stuff like that. There's nothing that's come to light, you numbskull. Nothing. All they talk about is you arriving and departing from court, buddy. That's pretty much all they write about. Or that you misled, you couldn't, talk well on the stand. Like, he is so up in his own mind. Like, he just must live on delusion pills constantly. Like, seriously, the level of narcissism here and just completely a lack of grasp of reality is just shocking in some ways. Because Harry, again, seriously, bud, seriously, none of the thing has come to light. We've learned nothing. We've literally learned nothing, except for the fact that you're sort of a vindictive guy who's just going to go after the media endlessly until you're satisfied, which you'll probably never be satisfied. So there's nothing that's come to light. You might want to think that. You might think that. And that's nice for you, I guess, but not really true.
That people and the British public especially simply have no idea about.
And still don't. Because you've made such a circus around your life. Even if you're doing something great like this, nobody's looking at it. You have made yourself the sideshow attraction. So even if you are on this righteous campaign, nobody's looking at it. Like, literally nobody's looking at it. Because it's all about you and your wife and your terrible decisions. That's what everybody focuses on. So even if you brought things to light, even if you're shining a light for the British public, they're not any better aware for it. Well, I really wish somebody would just give him a good smack of reality time and time again, which this reporter again fails to do. She fails to ask him a hard question. She allows him to dodge things. She allows him to just kind of give these sort of meaningless lines or whatever. It's the state of journalism is very pathetic.
The judge ruled that 15 out of 33 articles about his past girlfriends, a conversation with his brother, his deployment to Afghanistan, were all the result of unlawful invasions into his privacy.
This was years ago. Why do we care now? Why do we care now? That's the thing that Harry's failed to prove. Why do we need to care now? That this, we knew this. None of this is new. We knew phone hacking was happening. It happened to Catherine 155 times and only Harry 9. Nobody cares. And it's not going to change the outcomes of his relationships. It's not going to change anything. This, again, is so incredibly silly.
In total, he's reportedly been awarded hundreds of thousands of pounds in damages.
So again, nothing's changed. He looks like a dummy here. He really does.
Can you just spell out to me what kind of criminal tactics Mirror Group newspapers used against you?
Well, there's voicemail interception, blagging of flight records. It was always referred to as just phone hacking, but it's the unlawful information gathering.
Well, it would be nice if your public reputation wasn't so in the toilet that some of these illegal tactics, which are no longer happening, could actually be brought to light. But the thing is, again, nobody cares because none of this is really happening anymore. So again, why do we care now? And this is a question I'll continue to ask because Harry needs to make a case for now, not and he is technically, he's trying to, but he can't equate then and now. It doesn't work because the same things aren't happening.
And the use of private investigators that was really the secondary part to this.
When you got the judge's ruling that you...
And if you got the judge's ruling that you had been hacked, we all knew he had been hacked. None of this changes any. Again, none of this is new information, really. That's what's so incredibly stupid about all this. None of this is new information.
had been hacked. What was your reaction?
To go in there and come out and have the judge rule in our favor was obviously huge.
On something that the media wasn't totally denying. It's like, I don't know how you would compare to it. It's like winning when you said the thing already or whatever. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. But again, this is such a hollow win that Harry is doing a victory lap before the dust has settled is uh not a great move.
But for him to go as far as he did with regard to, you know, this wasn't just the individual people. This went right up to the top. This was lawyers. This was high executives.
So he's really going after the high executives as well, like Piers Morgan, who doesn't like Meghan Markle. So is this really about holding people accountable, or is it a vindictive campaign against those who don't like Meghan Markle? That again is the thing here in this situation for Harry, which again, I don't think he's fully recognizing.
And to be able to achieve that in a trial, and that's a monumental victory.
Again, like only people who really just believe everything Harry and Meghan say might buy this. Anybody who's actually paying attention knows this is just absolute hogwash. This is totally and absolutely complete and utter hogwash.
The judgment that Mr. Justice Fancourt handed down is devastating.
And this is an investigative journalist guy who exposed some of the phone hacking, and he says it's a really, really devastating judgment. And I'm like, against who? None of those people are in the same positions anymore. It's been, in some cases, 20 years since some of this stuff happened. It's no longer happening. There's been a ton of inquiries.
All part of Harry's mission.
I love how she has to say Harry's mission. This is his mission. He's saving the world, guys. You just need to allow him to continue his mission. And I kind of hate this sort of nonsense. This is not a mission. This is a personal campaign of spite. That's what this is.
This is a David versus Goliath situation. The Davids are the claimants, and the Goliath is this vast media enterprise.
Which we've already covered. Harry is employed by a large media enterprise called Netflix. So this David and Goliath comparison is a little silly.
I'm trying to get justice for everybody.
Are you really, or really just yourself and your wife, Meghan Markle? Because I think the true justice you're seeking is for yourself, nobody else, just yourself.
To understand these courtroom conflicts, you need to go back 30 years.
And so that I think is key. We need to go back 30 years to understand these cases. So this is not something that's happening now. It's something that started 30 plus years ago and ended 10 plus years ago. So again, connections here. It's something that happened in the past. But then Harry makes comparisons to now, and they're not the same thing. They're not the same thing in any stretch of the imagination.
But sometimes the methods to get those stories were unlawful. Was that justified?
Perfectly, yeah, because what is in the public interest?
This is an interesting topic. What is in the public interest? And yes, I agree. Sometimes those issues go way, way too far. But at the same time, too, sometimes the public does have an interest in knowing what people are doing sometimes behind the scenes, because you're either paying them or they're doing something illegal or those sorts of things. Like you sometimes do have the right, but it should always be gathered in a good manner. But there should be a right to investigate. And that's what, again, I think Harry is pushing against really here, is the right to investigate. Harry and Meghan hate channels like mine because I try to hold them to account. I try to say, no, that's hypocritical. No, that you had to have known that Archie wasn't going to get a title because of the letters of patent. This is not a mystery, but you're claiming this thing and smearing the entire royal family with this horrible accusation, which you have to know is false. But you're banking on other people not knowing. And that's why I have to hold them, or I feel like I need to hold them to account, because I know they're banking on the ignorance of others. And I find that deplorable.
And I think the public is capable of saying what it's interested in. And the very fact that 5 million people put their hand in their pocket and paid £1 to read it, surely that is public interest enough.
I like that he talked about that. People are paying to read it, so they want to read it. And that is an interesting. Now, I will say there's kind of a complicated dynamic here, because Yes, we as human beings, and this has been true for all of human history, have a love of salacious gossip. And so anytime you can put that in print, people love it. It has always been a vice of humanity. So it is on us in some ways too. And sometimes though as well, it's sometimes celebrities have to recognize too that, let's see, talk about Hugh Grant in this instance that he went and he doesn't really hold the papers at fault for this because he did this, but he went and he picked up a prostitute and that made the papers because he got arrested. And so it's kind of like you're feeding the beast too. Sometimes the personal decisions of public figures feeds the media beast that already exists. That's the case with Harry and Meghan as well. They have fed the media beast. And I think my personal opinion is, and again, this whole video is prefaced in many ways with my personal opinion, but that Meghan, of course, she was a D-list actress, always desperate for fame and fortune. So I think she was leaking the entire time she was dating Harry, and early marriage to him and everything. But I think she did sort of slow that down eventually because she got what she wanted and she wanted to change things and go in a different direction. But the media didn't pick up on her change of pace. And that's what she gets frustrated by, is that she started feeding the media beast. But even when she stopped, the beast kept churning, the thing kept rolling. She can't stop it. And that's because once you start something, sometimes you're not able to finish it. Sometimes the thing goes on without your control. And I think that's sometimes the real irritant for Meghan Markle.
Isn't there a difference between public interest and what interests the public?
No, it's exactly the same. It has to be.
Again, I find that really interesting. The difference between what interests the public and the public's interest is like, well, they're the same. And Harry goes into this as well, and we'll criticize him there because I have some very, very obvious things where Harry has violated his own privacy and given things to the public that we had no interest in. And yet is at the same time also complaining that, well, you don't need to know the personal aspects of my relationships with my girlfriends. Yeah, I will tell you about my frostbitten penis and how I thought of my mother when I was rubbing Elizabeth Arden cream on my nether regions. Yeah. Hypocrisy is like so obvious. It's almost kind of silly. It's just a marvel to me that his PR team lets him go and just make a fool of himself almost constantly.
But don't people have a right to privacy?
You might want privacy, but you don't need it. The only people who actually need it are people who are doing something fundamentally wrong or bad.
Okay, I want to stop, and this is very interesting. The only people who need privacy are those who are doing something fundamentally wrong or bad. And I think, honestly, there's some truth to that. There is some truth to that. Now, of course, when it comes to medical records, I'm not saying that because, we all have things that we should just be between us and our doctors and everything. But I think sometimes, especially in this public sphere, if there's nothing wrong or bad, then what is the privacy? How is it hurting you kind of thing? I somewhat get that. Yes, I agree that if you want to keep things private, you should be able to. But at the same time, too, if you have nothing to hide, why are you so concerned about privacy? And that's the interesting thing with Harry and Meghan. Harry and Meghan are constantly railing about privacy, privacy, privacy. But it raises the question then, what are you trying to hide? What are you trying to hide if you want privacy so badly? What's going on that you don't want people to see? Because there shouldn't be really anything that you're ashamed of, right? You're not doing anything wrong. They tell us that time and time again. But clearly something. And so I think that point is very important. So I really do think that's some interesting food for thought.
Those days.
Oh, I find Harry's like so full. Oh, woe's me thing. So unnecessary, especially because the real focus here is really on his girlfriends. Chelsea Davy, who's not interviewed here, Catherine, the Princess of Wales. They were really the ones who suffered a lot. But no, does Harry care about them? No, he doesn't even talk about Chelsea at all, really. It's like, well, she was the one who probably suffered more than anyone, but he doesn't care about her because it's all really about Meghan at the end of the day.
The paparazzi was something else. I mean, something extraordinary.
And that is true, but that doesn't really exist anymore. And of course, it makes Harry and Meghan look incredibly foolish to be complaining about paparazzi chases in Manhattan. Yes, we all know that was a joke, Harry.
Doesn't mean it doesn't happen still today, to me, to other people. But, I remember, I remember that night out.
Yeah, and again, we're supposed to feel so sorry for him. He went out partying and the paparazzi showed up and they trailed him. And I'm like, well, if you stayed at home and had a night in, you probably wouldn't have to deal with that. And yes, of course, he should be able to go out if he wants to, but there are consequences to your actions sometimes. And sometimes those are deserved, sometimes those are not, but that is the reality of going out on the town, is that you invited the press essentially because they knew you were going out and that was the environment of the time. If you wanted to avoid that, there are ways to do that. There are ways to do that. But you chose to live a particular way, and that resulted in particular actions. Again, actions have consequences is a foreign concept to Harry and Meghan.
I remember the paparazzi trying to get in the door, to get in the car. I remember being hit over the head by cameras. I remember my security doing everything they could to try to keep them away. It felt like harassment.
What about your sister-in-law, Harry? What about your sister-in-law? She dealt with this. It was worse. She was followed down the streets by a bunch of press officers. Do you care, though? Do you care about the paparazzi harassment your sister-in-law experienced? No, it's all about you. Doesn't even mention what Chelsea felt in this instance if she was there. Doesn't even mention it. Why? Because he doesn't care. It's all about him.
These people live above the law. And the police, I'm afraid, at least at that stage, were as dangerous as the reporters.
So that's quite a wild accusation as well, basically saying that you couldn't even go to the cops. Nobody would save you. I mean, that's quite a wild accusation for Hugh Grant to make.
If you called the police about anything, I remember my girlfriend getting mugged just around here. If you called them, you were absolutely sure that the first person who would turn up would not be a policeman, it would be a reporter. Because the Met just got straight on the phone to the tabloids.
I'd love to see if he has evidence of that, because that could be true, or they could be listening to the police scanners. At least in the United States, that's how oftentimes reporters get the news, is that they're listening to the police scanners. And if the police say, hey, X person was mugged on such and such street, they would know. But again, that might not be the case in the UK.
They systematically targeted phone numbers from the royal household, and to some extent, they were successful. Their hacking did bring in exclusives about Prince Harry and William, but the details were so specific, they could only have come from one place: voicemails.
And what she fails to do here, and then again, I criticize the journalist here for this, is that obviously a huge focus of the media was on William, not Harry. She prefaces with Princes Harry and William, but it was really William. Kate's phone was hacked 150 times. Harry's phone was only hacked 9 times. William's over 30. And so the true victims in this case is his own sister-in-law, which he fails to really recognize here. And again, which I think is pretty deplorable and again, misleading. Framing Harry as a huge victim in this when it was really more his brother and his wife.
Buckingham Palace grew suspicious and contacted the police. In August 2006, Clive Goodman and Glenn Mulcair are arrested.
So William is the one, and this was in a community notes as well. William was the one who brought this case to light. It was William, because the details were so specific. I believe it was Babykins, which was, I believe, William's nickname for Catherine. That is one of the things that they shared. And, William knew Catherine so well, knew that it didn't come from her and didn't really come from their friends. It had to come from somewhere. And that's how they sort of figured it out, if I remember correctly. So really, we have William to thank for this, but Harry is the one taking the victory lap.
The police seized the private investigators' notebooks containing thousands of names and mobile numbers, but no one else at the News of the World is charged. Within months, Scotland Yard closes the police investigation.
Our inquiries show that in the vast majority of cases, there was insufficient evidence to show that tapping had actually been achieved.
So this was interesting because obviously they did an investigation, and Harry is of course pushing as well for Met Police to get involved. And there's just not that much for the Met Police to do. And I think that's probably actually the case. This is not going to be a huge groundbreaking case. Like the people who believe that some huge legal victory is going to come out of this, I think is just frankly kind of silly, because there's just not enough there. This is not the type of case where you get more things than what you might think.
We know about what was happening.
My editor was Piers Morgan. He was somewhat obsessive about celebrity news. There was no question that he knew what was going on.
And there's no doubt in my mind that the inclusion of Piers Morgan's here is very, 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 very intentional. Why? Because Meghan Markle hates Piers Morgan. Why? Because she tried to cozy up to him. Then she dropped him like a hot potato as soon as she got with Prince Harry. And he's called her out numerous times. Now, some of it you could say is because of the drop relationship, but some of it too was like, hey, we were all happy. You connected with me. You were desperate to talk to me. And then you dropped me. And then I tried to communicate with you and got nothing. And then all of a sudden you're ragging on our royal family. And so people just called out the BS, but the vindictive campaign against Piers Morgan definitely is still alive and well. Harry and Meghan would like nothing more than to bury Piers Morgan in some ways, or at least some of what he is saying. And so the inclusion of this gentleman here is very, very deliberate, but he also has an axe to grind.
James lost his job on the City column after he was caught insider trading.
So obviously they didn't fully discredit him, but you got to say, revenge is an obvious case.
I see the Mirror now as a criminal enterprise.
And she's not really differentiating between then and now. And that I find is a huge problem because they're smearing essentially the Mirror newsroom now as a criminal enterprise. They're not, I don't think, necessarily being explicit that this was my experience for the 2 years he worked there, maybe the small amount of time he worked there, that was his impression. But that was maybe 20 years ago, and they're talking about it as if it's now. This I criticize her for immensely in this, with not being clearer on when the timeline is. You notice it throughout if you watch the whole thing, that the timeline on some of these things is not clear. It's clear from some of the footage that this is old, but then they're talking about things as if it's now. Two different things.
When the 16-month inquiry came to an end in 2012, its key recommendation for a new, tougher industry watchdog was effectively ignored by the papers, with concerns over press freedom.
Yes, oh yes, that is incredibly, incredibly important. Stronger regulations would inevitably result in more censorship. That's what it always happens. It can be done with the greatest intentions. But when you start to censor things and be a watchdog and a guard dog and everything, inevitably what you end up with is diluted reporting only certain things. Like we see this in the US media, is that certain members of the media, like they lean a certain political way and everything they do is serving that political bent. And I know some people don't like to get into politics, but I don't feel like it's politics. I feel like it's just kind of sort of obvious what we see is that people push a particular agenda. And you could argue I do too, but I don't really try to cover my bias. I don't say, oh, I'm an unbiased spectator here. I try to tell you I'm pretty clear about what my biases are. And if you watch this channel enough, you should be able to pick up on that. But I think the danger is people who tell you, oh, I'm not biased when they clearly are. And we see this a lot in the media. But freedom of the press is incredibly important because we see the press actually curtailing themselves when really the press should be dogging anyone with a story. And what I mean by that is that if there is a story that is of public interest, especially government, those sorts of things, pursue it to the greatest intention. But that's not what the media is doing now. But if you had a watchdog agency, especially one that all of a sudden gets attached to the government and bada bing, bada boom, all of a sudden you have this conglomerate that is censoring the information that's getting out there. And that's dangerous. And that's why places like Twitter, YouTube, everything are so important because it allows this greater forum of sharing information. Yes, some of it's bad, but some of it's good too. And it's your job, though, as the public to determine what is good and what is bad. I hate the idea that it's a watchdog agency that should be able to determine that. No, it should be you who should be able to determine that. And yes, some of these tactics were bad, but that's not the issue here really at the end of the day.
We do have an independent regulator, but most of the press are not in any way attached to it.
Because they don't want the censorship and it would inevitably result in changing how stories are put out there. It would 100%. I don't care what the best intentions are or whatever. It would result in a changing of the narrative to suit particular people, which is what Harry and Meghan want. They want media censorship on negative stories because they think any story critical of them is negative. Like I was on Twitter recently and there was this story talking about how, well, all the royals really are at risk in some ways. And some people are like, well, it's you with all your hateful comments. And I'm like, what about my comments is actually hateful? They can't really answer that question because they don't really know, because they smear everything that's negative with hate, which is different. Criticism is not hate, but people can't seem to understand that anymore. And there's a danger there too in not understanding what hate is that criticism is not hate, but they smear everything with that. And so people can't really differentiate anymore. But you should be able to criticize ideas. I always focus on ideas. You'll notice that I focus on ideas and clothes. Very rarely focus on them as a person. Sometimes I do, because we do have to talk about that. But criticizing is actually a part of journalistic integrity in many ways. But Harry and Meghan, again, they don't want that. They want silence. They want compliance. They want a cheery narrative that they want. She wants her Instagram aesthetic everywhere, but not everyone is willing to play by that game. And I don't think they should have to.
And the regulator cannot function if none of the organizations that it is intended to regulate actually join it.
And they don't want the regulation because it will result in censorship. All the best intentions, that's what it will end up being.
The publisher paying out compensation to its victims, but each case was settled out of court.
So I want to key in on this here, is that all the cases mentioned, basically everybody who's being interviewed is saying this, is that they all got compensation for this, and most of them got an apology. So what is the point of Harry pursuing this? Again, that I think is a key thing here. What is the point now? I mean, even when this was, I think some of these cases were from 2011. That makes infinitely more sense than even now. What is the point? That is what Harry has failed to answer in this, or anytime he blabs on about the media. It's that he's failing to answer why something that happened 15 years ago is still something that needs to be approached the way Harry wants it to be now. That, again, is the critical distinction here.
It is a common thread that runs throughout. A legacy of paranoia and broken relationships.
And so what they're really setting up here is this paranoia, this legacy of broken relationships, and how it's impacted Harry, because it's the media that's responsible for his paranoia and broken relationships, not Harry. Not Harry. It's all the media. It's all the media, which we all know isn't true. Anybody with the eyeballs knows it's not true anymore. Like, that he tries to perpetuate this lie, I think. I'm just like, you know, we've all seen the collapse of your family relationships over the last several years. We've all seen it. It's not a mystery to us. It's clearly a mystery to you, but it's not a mystery to us. And so Harry just seems to think if he says the thing over and over and over again, that we'll actually believe him, which I just don't think is the case.
And none have played out more publicly, perhaps, than those affecting Prince Harry.
But they're the ones he's responsible for. Oprah, Spare, Netflix, multiple interviews by Harry and Meghan. They have all contributed to this. This has been the greatest thing. It's not the tabloids, it's Harry. And we'll show a clip at the end of this from Camilla Tominley of The Telegraph. Call Harry outgoing. You shared things that I could never get past our lawyers. And that's 100% true. Harry has been the gravest violator of the privacy of the royal family ever, is Harry and Meghan. The two of them together have been the greatest violators of the royal family's privacy. It's not the phone hackers, it's Harry and Meghan.
Harry's girl to dump him. Seems as though they knew something before I even did.
Well, I think they probably did, because he doesn't strike me as a super bright guy, and so he's probably a bit deluded. But yeah, I can imagine that would grow the paranoia. But if you really know somebody, then you might not be so apt to believe certain things, because I think William knew Catherine well enough that he wasn't swayed by everything in the media. But Harry was, and is still. He's obsessed with the media.
As well as phone hacking, Mirror Group newspapers commissioned private investigators to blag the flight information, credit card details, or phone bills of Prince Harry's then girlfriend, Chelsea Davy.
But he's not, again, bringing her on to talk about this. That's what I have a huge issue with here, is that she is the greatest victim, and he completely ignores her, pretty much. He ignores her completely here. It's not him, and it's all about Meghan.
There is evidence to suggest that she was being hacked in the mid-90s, probably one of the first people to be hacked. And yet, still today, the press, the tabloid press, very much enjoy painting her as being paranoid.
But Harry, she was paranoid. because of Martin Bashir. This has been well established. Apparently, you're the only one who doesn't know it. I'm shocked that we're all having to tell you this. But Diana was paranoid because Martin Bashir lied to her. He lied to her, showed her false records and information that the palace was undermining her. And as a result, it increased her level of paranoia, which resulted in her not utilizing Scotland Yard protection, Met protection, which resulted in her car accident. It is from Martin Bashir, the paranoia resulting from Martin Bashir that led directly in many ways to Diana's death. You are negatively impacting the reality of what people did to her in order to suit your own agenda by blaming the media. It wasn't the media in terms of the tabloids that you hate how they treat your wife. No, it was Martin Bashir, a specific journalist who got Diana to do this interview by lying to her and resulting in this horrific circumstance. And you not acknowledging that is just, again, it's just a despicable thing to suit your own agenda. You're deliberately rewriting history, glossing over things that you don't like to suit your own agenda. It wasn't the tabloid media, it was Martin Bashir. And she was paranoid, and calling her that is not an insult. It reflects reality of the situation. William recognizes that the situation resulted in paranoia because he was there with your mother. He saw those things happen. He saw the influence. Harry does not have a realistic view of his mother. William does. William sees her as a human being. Harry sees her as a media image that they created of her. He has a saintly, deified image of his mother. And William has a realistic view of his mother. William sees his mother as a human being. Harry doesn't. And because of that, you get two different variations on what the brothers think. And some people go, well, William's bad for calling his mother paranoid. No, he's not. He's dealing in the reality of her situation and being honest about what happened with her, rather than Harry, who's trying to rewrite, again, not only his history, but her history, so many other people, because the media is not nice to his wife and he can't stand that and he can't fix that for her. She gets mad at him for it. So he's doing everything he can to fix that. Not working. So he has to, I would argue, lie his way out of it to make it work.
But she wasn't paranoid. She was absolutely right of what was happening to her.
Then prove it. You have to prove it. You just say, oh, they were absolutely right about what was. Well, prove it, Harry. You got to prove it.
And she's not around today to find out the truth.
Yeah, that you're kind of been an awful human being the last 4 years. Yeah, I think she'd be incredibly disappointed in you, Harry, to be quite honest. I think she'd be horrifically disappointed in how you've treated your family, your brother. She'd be very disappointed in you, to be honest.
Does your mother motivate you in this legal fight?
There's all sorts of things that motivate me.
I like how he dodges it there. There's all sorts of things that motivate me. Oh, like your wife? This is really about your wife, Harry. We all know this is all about your wife at the end of the day.
While it's never been proven in court that Princess Diana was hacked, the past remains raw.
Then challenge him on that. Say, there's no evidence for that. So why are you saying that? Can you prove it? Where's the evidence for it? She doesn't do any of that. Again, criticizing the journalist here.
I know that it is clear now to everybody that the risk of taking on the press and the risk of such retaliation from them by taking these claims forward, it's clearly not in my interest to do that.
That is not clear to anyone. Again, he speaks in these broad things as if we're all on his side and we all understand what he's doing. But again, this is a problem with Harry and Meghan overall, is that their branding and marketing and just their talking points suck. You guys suck at this. Your PR team sucks at this. You guys can't get your message across well. And because of that, when you say, well, everybody realizes and see, it's just simply not true. And yes, we realize it's probably not in your best interest to do that because the media stories are still negative, but they would have been negative either way. So he's not even impacting anything. They're just regurgitating what he's given them. The thing here is that Harry has given the media the greatest talking points about himself ever, which is via Spare and Oprah. Like, he's given them the best negative stories they could possibly imagine. He's given it to them. And so they're just repeating and reporting what he's given them. And he's just so incredibly tense. And you just feel like, just looking at him here and his eyes and everything. And I'm like, wow, you really believe your own your own BS, don't you, bud? You just really kind of do believe it. He's, the wide-eyed of a true believer there. And he just the distinction between reality and fantasy is very hard to determine for Harry.
Look at what has happened in the last 4 years to me, my wife, and my family. Right. So that was a very hard decision for me to make, which is how bad is it going to get?
But he's fueled it. You have fueled it, Harry. You could have left the royal family and done your own thing, but no, you have to be cosplay royals. You have to drag your family every chance you get. That's why you have this negative reaction. It's you. It's you. So you can't blame the media or this trial for making negative headlines. It's you. It's always been you, Harry.
Some people would say that you taking on these high profile battles, but that actually attracts more attention onto you.
There is more than enough attention on me and my wife anyway. They pushed me too far.
How though? How? Because what happened to you and Meghan was, I'm sorry, not that bad. It wasn't. It wasn't that bad. And again, I think he is dealing with how she has pushed him in particular ways and separated him and everything. And I think too, when you are separated from people who hold you to account, people who know actually what's going on, then you can get more and more lost in the delusional fantasy that he and Meghan have, the shared delusion that they have about their place within the royal family and how the negative press was so bad. The press was great for them for the most part until they started being nasty to their staff. And guess what? The staff talked. The staff started leaking to the press. I saw this in somebody's Twitter post. It's like, well, Catherine and William's team had leaked negative stories about Harry and Meghan. I was like, no, Harry and Meghan's own team did that because they didn't like them because they were terrible bosses. And guess what? When you're a terrible boss, people don't want to help you and they actively throw you under the bus. This has happened time and time again. And so Harry and Meghan really, again, are at fault for so much of the negative press that they have because they did not follow protocol. They flaunted what they should have done. And then they're mad that people call them out on it. And it's like, well, it was your fault. You're the ones who did that. And here is the critical thing here.
It got to a point where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I don't think there's anybody else in the world that is better suited and placed to be able to see this through than myself.
Again, savior complex. Savior complex. I can see it through. I'm going to fix things. I. If you were a celebrity who participated, or a regular person in this case, who participated in this documentary, you got to realize that Harry's not in it for you. He's not in it to change the industry. He's in it for himself. And he's in it to validate his own savior complex. And here's the kicker.
And all it takes is one lone actor, one person who reads this stuff to act on what they have read. And whether it's a knife or acid, whatever it is. And these are things that are a genuine concern for me. It's one of the reasons why I won't bring my wife back to this country.
Harry, the same is true for your family. Obviously, you made allegations of racism, and wouldn't you know it, some guy took that, the lone actor guy took initiative. Same thing could happen to Catherine or Charles, and you don't give a crap. You don't give a crap how any of what you have said could impact your family. It's all about your wife. Your wife can't come to this country because, one lone actor. Well, the same could be said in California or Jamaica or Nigeria. This logic is stupid. It's just plain stupid. And this documentary is supposed to be on phone hacking and information gained illegally. And now he's saying essentially that all negative stories could result in a lone actor attacking Meghan Markle. Ergo, he must continue these court cases because he must eliminate negative stories. That's the truth here. He wants to eliminate any negative stories. That's the truth of the matter. And that truth is, of course, based in a lie. And based in a lie that's dangerous because he's telling you, oh, it's all about this stuff over here. When really he's trying to get all negative stories about him and his wife expunged from the internet. That's what he wants. No negative stories, no negative consequences because, a lone actor. I can, smear my family as much as I want. So if one lone actor attacks them, it's on them, right? That is what he's saying. It's so ugly. It's so horrid. It's so awful that he just doesn't even recognize that he is putting his own family at risk. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. But the smear and allegations of racism against Catherine resulted in a massive swarm of negative attacks. Like, the impact of that could be seen through the "where is Kate" things through social media. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy that he fails to recognize any of this. Harry's just an awful brother-in-law. He truly is. It's just an awful, awful brother-in-law. And Meghan is at greater risk in California, Nigeria, Jamaica, Costa Rica than she is in the UK. I'm sorry, the greatest risk she has is getting booed, Harry. And that's what she doesn't want. She doesn't want to be booed. She will be perfectly fine, as she has been every other time she's been in the UK. She's been perfectly fine. Negative stories exist. That is just reality. If you're a public figure, negative stories exist. It's your job to elevate above them. And Harry and Meghan can't seem to do it because she can't stand any negative stories. And so this lie that you're telling yourself is just a manipulation tool. It's not true. It's just simply not true, because if it's true for you, it must be true for everyone, because the lone actor can do anything to anyone, Harry. You are not immune from this. Your wife is not immune from this. We are all at risk to a certain extent from a lone actor. And your family, of course, is as well. Charles, Catherine, William, they are all at risk of a lone actor. Your wife is not alone in that scenario, you could say. So you lying about this or misleading the public and making the statement basically that it's only Meghan who's ever at risk is just simply untrue, because you've said enough that could leave your brother, your wife, your nephews and niece, your father, your stepmother, your cousins all at risk. But it doesn't matter. All that matters is Meghan Markle.
Both your father and your sister-in-law have been unwell. This is not worth it. Life is just too short for these legal battles.
That's a good question, because Harry, again, is trying to solve his problems with litigation, and it just is not going well.
I don't think the continuation of these legal battles is the sort of, the two things are completely separate.
No, they're not, because you're involving your family in your legal dramas. So because of that, they're not totally separate. And you are trying to fix your personal problems with lawyers, and again, that never goes well.
My father and my sister-in-law and me, following through on these legal battles are two completely different things.
You almost get the sense he doesn't totally believe that either. And frustrated, perhaps, that she even challenged his delusions here at this point. But Harry, again, his sister-in-law and his father are going through some really serious things, and these ridiculous legal nonsenses are not helping.
And if it's one penny less than that settlement that you were offered by the other side months earlier, you have to pay both sides' costs, which I was advised in this case would be about 10 million quid.
So Harry's on the hook for potentially 10 plus million pounds. Yes. If he continues to pursue this endlessly, he is on the hook for millions upon millions of dollars potentially. Because I don't think at the end of the day, he'll probably get the huge settlement that he wants. And again, what is the point? What is he going to gain from this? What is the public going to gain from this, from things that are no longer happening? So again, this is all very much totally and completely pointless.
And much as I want these things to come to light in a trial, I shied at that fence. 10 million quid. It's too much.
But Harry is willing to just gamble all that money away potentially. I mean, because this is gambling. You could either win big or you could lose big. And even if he wins, he may sort of lose at the end. And even he says, like, I'm doing this and hoping all this stuff comes. Well, nothing's coming out, Harry. Nothing's being revealed and being brought into the light of day. Like, this whole nonsense is just really, quite frankly, silly.
Meanwhile, Prince Harry's case, accusing the son of unlawful information gathering, continues.
Are you determined to go all the way to trial, whatever the cost?
Great question. And he says, yeah, he's going to gamble all those millions for Netflix away.
That is the plan. If I can get to trial, then we're talking over a decade's worth of evidence, most of which has never, ever been known to the public.
But the question is, and Harry even offered this earlier, is it in the public's interest or is the public interested? Two different questions. And I would argue most of the time the public isn't really all that interested. Yes, the public maybe has some interest, but I don't think as much as Harry thinks. This is personal to him. I don't think the rest of the public is just clamoring for the information that was left out of the Leveson inquiry or whatever. I just don't think they're that interested in that. And so really, I think this is a fool's errand because he's thinking, oh, the public's going to be so interested. There's information here that they've never seen. But maybe, just maybe, Harry, they don't care. And that's probably that would be the worst for you, is that you would go through all this and end up with nothing.
There are accusations flying on both sides. Recently, Prince Harry was asked to explain how some of his own messages were apparently destroyed, a judge ordering him to search for deleted online exchanges with his biographer.
He is not held to that question. She mentions it, but doesn't ask him. And again, shame on her for not asking him.
But some will say there have been multiple criminal investigations, there have been convictions, millions of pounds have been paid out in compensation. Some will wonder, why are you still fighting?
Great question. That is a great question.
Because that evidence needs to come to the surface. And then after that, the police can then make their mind up, because this country and the British public deserve better.
And they deserve better than Prince Harry, to be quite honest, because Harry, nobody cares. At the end of the day, nobody cares. There's not going to be a police investigation. Nobody is going to take this any further. This is a fool's errand, unless you have a smoking gun, which you have failed to produce in this entire documentary so far. Failed to produce anything that I find all that compelling. You know, things that are happening now, I don't think the police are going to investigate. It's old. There's statute of limitations. I don't know what they are in the UK. I don't know the UK legal system at all, but there are statutes of limitations. And so Harry could be doing all this, and then the police go, what do you want us to do? Like, seriously, this is so old. We're going to have to, I mean, once you get 10 plus years past a crime, especially something as pedantic as this, to be quite honest. And if they have a backlog of other more pressing cases, Harry, they are not going to investigate this. That's just reality, because it's going to take them so many resources, especially white collar crimes like this, take a lot of resources, a lot of time. And they might, at this point, you know, he thinks his evidence is so great, they might look and go, so we already got this in X, Y, and Z. There's not even really a good case here. The question is, again, you know, public interest versus interest of the public, or whatever the comparison is. What interests Harry versus what is actually prosecutable? What crime can you share about publicly, and what can you actually prove? The case is always what you can prove. Civil litigation has a much lower threshold than crime. And so to get to the crime level, it's going to be really, really, really hard. It's going to be incredibly hard. In some of the cases, what they've done might not have even been illegal. What do you want them to do? How do they prove it? The records don't exist. You even deleted your own records. So how do you expect them to have records from 15, 20 years ago? Again, this is just nonsense in so many ways. It's just absolute, complete and utter nonsense.
Prince Harry's mission stands in stark contrast to his brother's approach. In 2020, Prince William reportedly settled out of court with News Group newspapers for what's been described as a very large sum of money.
He settled because there was no point in going through the trial. They admitted the mistake. He could get a settlement out of it, and then he could be done and get on with his life. Harry's the one who can't let things go. And Harry's the one determined to, quote unquote, fix things. And then he does something here, which I think is so despicable, Prince Harry, which is throw his family under the bus. Again, that's all he seemingly can do, is throw them under the bus and not acknowledge any of the part he played in the breakdown of the relationship or how his actions negatively impact them. So
to what extent do you think that your determination to fight the tabloids destroyed the relationship with your family?
I think there's, that's certainly a central piece to it.
No, it's not. It's Netflix, Spare, Oprah, so many other things, Harry. That is why your relationship with your family is dead. This trial, I think it's an annoyance to them, but I honestly don't think they care that much. They think it's your idiocy that you're throwing your money away. So they're like, well, flush it down the toilet if you want to. Like, what can we do? Their frustration is you. Their frustration is Harry sharing their personal information and details. The issue is Harry. Harry's given the press more stories about the royals.
But that's a hard question to answer, because anything I say about my family results in a torrent of abuse from the press.
His best response would be to shut his mouth. If he's getting abuse from the press, then shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Because everything you say gets twisted. Well, maybe it's because you said it in the first place. Again, Harry just doesn't seem to understand that he is the root cause of everything, that the issues rest with him, not his family. It rests with Harry.
I've made it very clear that this is something that needs to be done. It would be nice if we did it as a family. I believe that, again, from a service standpoint, and when you're in a public role, that these are the things that we should be doing.
Oh, I find that so deplorable of him, and going, well, I'm doing this because, we serve the public and I'm trying to serve the public. It's all about serving himself there. And again, I find that utterly despicable. He wants to serve himself, but he's saying, well, as a public servants, we should be doing all this investigation and everything into the press, because that's what we should be doing as public servants. And no, Harry, this is to suit you. And you go on to say this, essentially, this is all about you. This is not about them and their roles. And the royals are smart, and they let it rest with the police. And sometimes too, when you go through these type of things, more things get raised than what you want, because the lawyers, all they want to do is dig. They want to win their case. They're paid to win the case, and so they'll try to destroy you. And the royal family is like, we don't really want to play that game, because we don't really have to. Our lives are pretty good, and yes, the media is not perfect, but they're not doing that now. There's actually, I would say, a really good relationship right now between the palace and the press. Generally, they have obviously done a great job leaving Catherine alone. There's been rogue actors, mostly in the States, who have started the whole "Where is Catherine" hashtag and everything. Some members of the British media have picked that up as well, but they've largely respected her privacy, the privacy of the children and everything. So I would say the relationship between the press and the palace is great. It's Harry who's the aberration here. It's Harry who's having issues, because Harry is the issue.
For the greater good. But I'm doing this. I'm doing this for my reasons.
And that's the truth. He's doing this for his reasons, himself, him. And they don't want to do this as a family, because they don't believe in this, because they think this is stupid. I imagine they think this is stupid. This is flushing money down the drain. This is going to bite them in the butt at some point. They are smart here. Harry's the dumb one in this situation. Harry's the one who's just allowing his lawyers to just basically make a boatload of money off him. Because at the end of the day, regardless of whether he wins or loses, his lawyers are the ones who are going to rake in the dough, not Harry. Not Harry. Even if he wins a summary judgment of a couple $100,000, if he's paid millions upon millions in legal fees, who cares? It's a wash. He doesn't make anything. He's in the negative. None of the public press attention is shifting. Nothing is going well in terms of his public image, his and his wife's public image. It's not shifting for the better. It's getting worse. So how is this helping anything, Harry? I just don't know.
What do you think of their decision not to fight in the way that you have?
I think everything that's played out has shown people what the truth of the matter is.
What does that mean? The truth of the matter is, what does it mean? I don't even know what that means. The truth of the matter, what truth of the matter? I don't even know what that means. What's the truth? What's the truth? There's no truth, Harry. There's no truth of the matter. We're just confused.
For me, the mission continues, but it has yes, it's caused, as you say, part of a rift.
You said in court documents that
part of the rift, a smidge itty bitty part of the rift. The rest of it, they don't care. But the queen. Now he's also bringing up another dead woman to justify himself. It's convenient how everybody who brings up to justify his actions is dead and can't speak. So
the queen, your granny, as you call her, supported your claim. What do you think she would think of what you're doing now?
She would just think, quite frankly, especially how he's treated the rest of the family, that he's pretty despicable. I imagine she's not terribly happy with him, but delusions are grand with Harry.
I wish we had many conversations before she passed. This is very much something that she supported.
I highly doubt that. I just really, really highly doubt that.
She knew how much this meant to me. I think she's very much up there going, see this through to the end. without question.
That is your delusional narcissism talking, Harry. That's not based in reality. And you're using a dead woman to justify your actions. The queen cannot speak for herself. She has passed on. But you are now putting words in her mouth. And you have done this time and time again to justify yourself. And I find it, frankly, deplorable. I don't think she's up there cheering you on. I think she's overall probably really disappointed in you and the things you've done over the past couple of years, because most people are.
On the horizon is another civil claim against the publisher of the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday, accused of hiring private investigators to bug properties, tap landlines, and blag private medical and bank records.
When, though? If this was before Meghan Markle, again, who cares? If this was years and years ago, I don't care. Why would I care? It's eons ago now, really.
It's the first time the news group has been taken to court in this scandal.
If, and it's a very big if, that one went wrong for the Mail, it would be hugely embarrassing.
Really, though? Because I think, again, these people are thinking like it's when the case first broke. But I think at this point, most people are over this. Most people know this happened and are just looking to move on.
Good afternoon, Harry. What do you hope to change through this court battle, Harry?
The repercussions of all this are a long way from subsiding. For Prince Harry and others, the fight continues.
But it's kind of a pointless fight. It's kind of a fight that, again, I think mostly serves the people who are impacted, which of course most cases do. But I think Harry is mistaken in trying to make this a huge like national thing rather than recognizing that this impacted him and others. And yes, it was deplorable that it happened, but this is really more personal now, not really this public fight that he wants to have.
People are damaged and they feel they have the possibility of getting some kind of satisfaction. And particularly if they have the resources to do so, they will go on and they will go on until they get satisfaction.
Mean like revenge? That's what I kind of got there, is almost like revenge. And that's dangerous, I think, when you're, masking your altruism with really, this is about revenge. So that is the end of the documentary. And of course, you can watch it all yourself. I clipped a little bits together. Well, hopefully it'll all go through and hopefully this comes together because everything crashed multiple times. So hopefully this all conglomerates together. But the big things I wanted you to get, and I hope you saw, is that Harry is really, again, trying to persuade and make this argument that negative stories, I mean, he's not direct about this, but negative stories against Meghan Markle, which have nothing to do with phone hacking or illegal information gathering, makes it too dangerous for her to visit the UK. So he must pursue these cases because it's too dangerous for her to visit the UK for things that happened over a decade ago that have nothing to do with the negative stories now. Like, it's just so nonsensical, but it's very on brand for Harry and Meghan because they are nonsensical. They don't make a ton of sense. And this case does not make a ton of sense. And this documentary, I think, too, is a terrible example. And if you want to make the case against what the newspapers did and everything like that, of course, make that case. The problem is, I don't think anybody really made their case here. I don't think anybody made their case very well because the main feature of this is Prince Harry, who does not have as strong a phone hacking case as many of them, including his own brother and sister-in-law. And he's really using this to justify his campaign against the media because of Meghan Markle. And so these two competing narratives can't coalesce together because they're so incredibly different. The media landscape of the 90s and early 2000s is completely and utterly different than what is happening now. And Harry using the legal system to try to criticize to try and silence his critics and Meghan Markle's critics, I think is a terrible example. And he's not going to win people by doing this. He's not going to change the public perception of him and his wife by doing this. Everything will still be as bad as it was before, or even worse. And he's even mentioned that, well, I guess my case isn't going to, no, what did he say? Essentially, he's like just acknowledging that things, still aren't going well. Well, yeah, no, they're not. And this is not going to fix your relationship with your family. It's not going to make your wife happy. It's not going to bring your mother back to life. I don't think any of this is going to fix the things that Harry really wants to fix, which has nothing to do with the media or phone hacking and everything to do with his own personal problems. Harry needs to seek, and although it's not good, the people he saw. This is more about therapy than it is about justice. This is more about therapy than justice. The situations he's trying to resolve here would be better spent maybe in a therapist's office, maybe spending time with his family, his friends, better resolved that way than through the legal system. He's not going to change anything. The British people aren't asking for this. He's forcing this on in them, forcing them to abide by his will because he is a prince and he knows best. He's experienced pain, and so has his wife, and so they know best. And I criticize the journalist who led this for not challenging this, for basically just making a yes piece for Harry, which is what he wants. He wants a yes piece. He wants nobody to challenge him. He wants nobody to try to redirect the narrative. And even when they give him, you could argue hard questions, they're softball hard questions where he's just basically able to dodge them. He doesn't even give a good answer because it's not about this. It's about Meghan. It's about changing things so Harry can make Meghan happy so that they can have all the positive headlines that they want. But I mean, he's not even asking and recognizing that the headlines are negative in the States. So there's like a cover I saw recently where it talked about divorce between Harry and Meghan and Untouched. I thought I took a picture of it. I guess I didn't. Either way, Harry and Meghan might be getting divorced, and so that's not a negative headline. So why is it bad when it's the British public making negative headlines, but not the U.S. magazines? Why is it okay for the US magazines to do it, not the British ones? Are the US ones not causing controversy? It's all about the British. The British are bad. The British press, so bad, so terrible. Like, forget the American press. They're not doing anything bad. I mean, again, the hypocrisy there is clear. Harry can't really make his argument because his argument is nonsensical. It doesn't really make any sense. And because of that, he's pursuing this campaign, dumping money essentially down the drain for something that will never really ever come, which is this broad acceptance for anything him and Meghan say without a smidge of pushback. People recognize the hypocrisy of Harry and Meghan. They recognize the faults that Harry and Meghan have made both in Britain and the United States. They've recognized how Harry and Meghan have damaged their relationship with the royal family by Netflix, Spotify, and Oprah. I mean, we all see that. We're not stupid. But Harry and Meghan, the thing is, they think we're stupid. Harry and Meghan think the public are stupid, and that if they share their side of the story long enough and hard enough, people will believe them. And yes, people do, but people who end up waking up and seeing through the BS don't. And so Harry is not making his case here. I think he is making the opposite of his case. And he really needs to think if he wants to, let's say, fix things with his family. I honestly think they could care less about this case. They don't care about this case. They care about him and how he's treated them. If he can fix that, he can fix his relationship with his family. Because even though he might say otherwise, this case has nothing to do with the breakdown of his family. It has everything to do, though, with him, the one person he doesn't want to hold to account. Laser focused on holding the media to account, but never himself. And that's why none of this will work, because he needs to hold himself to account first. Then maybe he can hold others. But until he does that, people will just continue to ignore this case. He might think he's changing the world, but the only thing he's doing is just burning money. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I shall see you again very, very soon. Bye.